I am Marjorie Vale, the woman my own daughter struck 12 times before I found the courage to reclaim what was mine. Every key, every choice, every silence led me here. To peace I built myself. Watch my story and see how dignity can outlast betrayal. Let's see. My name is Marjorie Vale, 71 years old, retired art appraiser. And for most of my life, I believed civility could tame cruelty. I dressed neatly, spoke softly, and carried my grief like porcelain fragile, but polished. That illusion shattered one humid evening in Savannah, in my daughter's perfect dining room. Celeste's townhouse smelled of lemon polish and money. She had restored it herself, every brick scrubbed clean, as if history were inconvenience. Her husband was working late, but her mother-in-law, Vivian Donovan, had arrived early, floating in with a sense of gardenias and judgment. I had brought a bottle of Malode, an old habit from before my blood pressure pills, and a tin of pralines I made that morning. Dinner began politely enough. Vivian asked about property taxes in my district. Her tone light but probing. Celeste joined in, explaining how lost paperwork could cause inheritance confusion. I smiled, pretending not to see the direction this was heading. Mom, Celeste said, her voice too sweet. You know you're still listed on the county records for the Gordon Street house. Right. That could cause legal issues for us later. Maybe it's time you transfer it completely. I reminded her gently that we had already discussed it years ago. Your father left it under both our names, dear. It was meant to protect us all. Something flickered in her eyes, anger or embarrassment. I couldn't tell. Then, as if my calm offended her, she stood. The first slap came without warning, the crack echoing off the high plastered ceiling. I tasted copper. Vivian did not flinch. She simply adjusted her napkin. Celeste's hand struck again and again, 12 times in total. I later counted by the throbbing rhythm across my face. The chandelier trembled. My breath stayed still. I did not raise my hand to stop her. I only stared at the portrait above the mantel, the one I paid to frame when she bought the house. When it was over, Celeste stepped back, chest heaving and hissed. You'll sign those papers tomorrow. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Then I gathered my purse, my tin of pralines untouched, and walked out into the thick Savannah night. The next morning, I unlocked my small apartment by the river and went straight to the old metal box beneath my bed, the one that still held my husband's papers. The bruise bloomed by morning, but deep violet spreading along my jawline. I pressed the cold cloth against it, watching my reflection blur in the small mirror above the sink. The woman staring back looked unfamiliar, her calm replaced by something heavier, quieter. Outside, the Savannah River moved like pewter under the early sun. I could hear the distant horns of cargo ships, steady and detached, while the ward inside my little rental room held its breath. On the table sat a tin of pralines I hadn't touched. Beside it, my late husband's old lockbox, gray metal, a little rusty. Secured by the same brass key I'd carried for decades, I hadn't opened it in years. But that morning, my hand found the keys easily. Inside were the remnants of a life built carefully, insurance slips, handwritten appraisals, and one crisp envelope with a fading blue seal, the property deed. The paper was yellow at the edges, the ink slightly smudged, but the names were clear. Marjorie Vale and the estate of Thomas Vale. Joint title with life estate retention. I traced the embossed stamp, remembering the day Celeste had come home triumphant, waving mortgage forms and speaking of tax deductions. You still live there, Mom, she had promised. It's just better this way. Trust me, everyone does it. I had trusted her. I had signed what Eli, our family friend called a protective clause, a way to retain my rights while helping Celeste secure a loan. But the real transfer had never been finalized. Now, that oversight was my salvation. My fingers trembled slightly as I dialed Eli's number. He answered on the third ring. His voice warmed, aged like good bourbon. Marge, haven't heard from you in a while. I need your help, I said, steadying my breath. I think Celeste may have forgotten something important. Within minutes, he was on the line, tapping keys. I listened to the clack of his old keyboard through the receiver until he spoke again, slower this time. You're right, he said. The title's still in your name. She never recorded the transfer. I closed my eyes, letting the truth settle like a stone in still water. The bruise on my face throbbed, but beneath it, something colder, clear, began to form resolve. Eli arrived that afternoon carrying a folder under his arm and the smell of old rain on his jacket. He looked older than I remembered. His silver hair combed neatly back, eyes still sharp behind his round glasses. When he saw my face, his smile faltered. You don't have to explain, he said quietly, setting the folder on the table. I can guess. We sat by the window, the light muted through thin curtains. He opened the file, spreading out papers with the patience of a man who had spent his life living by ink and claws. She defaulted, he said, tapping a highlighting paragraph. Your daughter was required to maintain insurance and taxes under a life estate agreement. She didn't. That gives you the right to reclaim full ownership or sell it outright if you wish. The word felt clinical, almost detached, but I could sense his caution beneath them. I'm not sure what I wish, I admitted. It's her home now, or at least she believes it is. Eli leaned back, studying me. Belief doesn't change law, Marge. You can handle this quietly. Issue notice. File with the county. Then close escrow with the neutral party. No confrontation, no headlines, just closure. Closure. The word sounded peaceful, but heavy too. I folded my hands in my lap, staring at the faint bruises that still shadowed my skin. I had spent years protecting Celeste from every storm, paying her tuition when her scholarship fell through, covering her debts when her pride couldn't bear the truth. And now she had turned that same pride into cruelty. She won't see it coming, Eli said softly, but it'll all be legal, by the book. I met his gaze, steady, for the first time in days. The ache in my cheek had dulled, replaced by a colder awareness of what I still owned and what I was finally ready to release. Then let's start the paperwork, I said. Monday morning arrived, pale and cold. The kind of day Savannah disguises as calm before it rains. I walked to the post office just after it opened, the smell of damp envelope and coffee filling the air. The clerk recognized me and slid over 3 certified mail receipts without comment. I signed each one slowly, carefully, one for Celeste's office, one for the property manager, and one for the county clerk. Every stroke of my pen felt precise, deliberate. By noon, I was sitting across from Tommy Baird at the downtown title office. He couldn't have been older than 35, polite in a way men are when they sense a story that shouldn't asked about. His desk was neat, pencils aligned, folders stacked, a small dish of peppermint beside the monitor. I understand you'd like a quiet cash close, he said. We've got a couple interested already. The Kent retired teachers moving down from North Carolina. They are looking for something close to the river. I nodded. They can have it furnished. Everything. Tommy hesitated, but didn't question me. He slid a document across the desk. We need your initials here and here. My hand didn't tremble. The notary watched, stamping each page with that small, irrevocable thud of ink on paper. When we reached the last page, Tommy pointed to the signature line. Final sign off, Mrs. Vale. I picked up the pen. The ink moved smoothly, my name forming its slow curve and tail. Marjorie Vale, 12 letters exactly. I paused, realizing the irony, and added the date in careful digits. 12 marks in total when the process was done. 12 slabs returned with paper and ink. Tommy smiled faintly. Gathering the documents. We'll record these by end of week. Funds should clear within 24 hours. Thank you, I said, slipping my copy into a brown envelope. That night, rain brushed against my apartment window, soft and rhythmic. I left the lights off, letting the glow from the riverboat wash the room in brief streaks of gold. The receipt, the notarized pages, the final signature, they lay neatly on the table, drying under the lamplight. Outside, thunder murmured somewhere over the marshes, and for the first time in years, I felt steady. Justice didn't roar, it whispered. By Friday afternoon, Savannah glowed under a heavy sun that promised rain. I stood beneath the shade of an oak across from the Gordon Street townhouse, enveloped in hand, watching the scene unfold with the quiet patience of someone who has already lived through worse. Celeste's silver SUV pulled up first, the sound of laughter spilling out as she and Vivian stepped out onto the curb, still in their pastel dresses from a charity branch. They looked radiant, unaware that the axis of their world had already shifted. Celeste reached for the brass key on her chain, sliding it into the front lock. It refused to turn. She frowned, tried again, then harder. The lock clicked once but did not yield. She turned to Vivian, confusion shading her voice. Something's wrong with the latch. Before Vivian could answer, a moving truck rounded the corner. Two uniformed men jumped down, guiding a furniture dolly up the walk. One carried the road rug, another held the box marked Kent. Bedroom set. Celeste froze. What are they doing? One of the movers glanced at her politely. Afternoon, ma'am. We are with the new owners. Got the green light to start unloading. The color drained from her face. New owners. A patrol car eased to the curb. Officer Daniels, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, stepped out, papers in hand. Mrs. Donovan Vale received prior notice from attorney Eli Torres. The property is being sold and recorded at the county office this morning. Vivian's poise cracked. This is elder fraud, she snapped. She manipulated an old woman, my daughter's mother, for her own benefit. Daniel suggested his hat. Ma'am, the deed shows full ownership under Mrs. Marjorie Vale. There is no evidence of coercion. Across the street, I watched their confusion ripple into panic. Vivian's voice rose, sharp and frantic. Celeste turned, scanning the street until her gaze found me beneath the oak. Her eyes were wide, shining not with tears but disbelief. You ruined me, she shouted across the pavement, her voice breaking. I lifted the envelope slightly, just enough for her to see the seal of the recorder's office. No, I said, calm as a river behind me. You sold me first. The wind carried her sobs into the still, humid air. The movers kept unloading. Rain began to fall light at first, then steadier, washing dust from the townhouse steps as the last illusion of ownership dissolved. By the following week, Savannah's polite whispers carried the story further than I ever could. The Gordon Street sale had become a quiet scandal in neighborhoods where gossip was served as carefully as afternoon tea. People spoke of legal filings and missing signatures of a daughter's mistake, wrapped in pride. Vivian Donovan, who once lived for luncheons and newspaper mentions, said nothing. Silence, in her word, was damage control. Celeste moved into a short-term rental off Broughton Street, one of those renovated apartments that smelled faintly of fresh paint and defeat. The eviction notice arrived less than a month later, her credit frozen, the security deposit forfeited. I heard through Eli that Eamon had left town for work in Jacksonville and filed for separation soon after. In every way that mattered, Celeste had built her own collapse, brick by brick. Eli stopped by the next morning with coffee and final papers. The funds have cleared, he said, sliding a small envelope across my table. It's all done. You're officially free of the property. I opened the folder, scanning the Crips transaction statements, sale recorded, funds transferred. My husband's name printed once more beside mine. Thomas Vale, like a quiet witness to justice, finally carried out. I thanked Eli, but my voice trembled on the last word. He studied me with that lawyer stillness that sees everything but never intrudes. You did right by yourself. Marge, he said, doesn't mean it feels good right away. After he left, I sat alone at my desk, the hum of the ceiling fan blending with the rhythm of the river beyond the window. The check rested beside a plain white envelope addressed to Safe Haven Shelter for Abused Elders. I filled in the amount without hesitation enough to repair their roof, maybe buy new bedding. When I sealed the envelope, I pressed my thumb against the flap for a moment longer than necessary. Then I walked it down to the mailbox at the corner, past blooming camellias, past a child drawing with chalk on the sidewalk. The sun was setting, gilding the river in soft gold. I slipped the envelope through the slot, watched it disappear, and felt something loosen inside me. Not triumph, not regret, just space where pain used to live. The cottage sat at the edge of Tybee Marsh, where the water met the grass in hush that never stopped. It wasn't much two rooms, a screened porch, and a tin roof that rattled when storms rolled in, but it belonged entirely to me. The first night I slept there, the air smelled of salt and pine, and the sound of crickets felt like a lullaby I hadn't heard in years. Mornings became a quiet ritual. I woke before the sun and brewed a small pot of tea, the steam calling through the stillness as light crept across the marsh. The view changed by the hour mist to gold, gold to glass, then to shadow again. Sometimes I painted the shells I found on the shore, tracing tiny veins of color until the shapes reminded me of resilience. Other times, I volunteered at a small library in town, shelving paperbacks and helping tourists find novels they'd forget before they finished. It didn't matter. Every small act builds a rhythm, and that rhythm became peace. In the top drawer of my writing desk, I kept a folded copy of the deed, the one bearing my name and Thomas's. It wasn't for proof. No one here asked for it. But some days, when doubt tried to return, I'd unfold the paper and remind myself of the journey it represented. It was no longer a weapon, only a record of survival. One evening, while sorting through old photographs, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. The number was familiar before I even looked. I pressed play. Mom, I don't know what happened to us. Celeste's voice cracked, half apology, half excuse. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You know how Vivian pushes me. I just, I miss you. There was a long pause, then a breath that wanted to be a sob but wasn't brave enough. The message ended abruptly. I heard the phone for a while, the silence between us louder than any scream had ever been. Then I pressed delete and set it face down on the table. Outside, the tide was rising, drawing the marsh grasses into a gentle sway. And for the first time in months, I felt completely still. 6 months slipped by like a slow tide. The marsh had grown greener, the air warmer. I'd almost stopped checking my phone for unfamiliar numbers when the knock came three soft raps that didn't belong to anyone from town. Through the window, I saw Celeste standing on the porch. Her hair, once sleek and lacquered, hung loose and uneven. The heels were gone, replaced by flat, scuffed from use. She looked smaller somehow, not just thinner, but diminished, as if her certainty had eroded with her fortune. Hi, Mom, she said quietly. Her voice trembled, stripped of its usual edge. Can we talk? I hesitated, then stepped aside. There's a cafe on Butler Avenue. We'll be more comfortable there. We drove separately. I wanted that distance. The cafe was half full, the hum of conversation, a soft shield. She ordered coffee but didn't touch it. I stirred my tea and waited. I've been staying with friends, she began, eyes darting towards the window, trying to get back on my feet. I know I messed up. I just want to make things right. There it was, remorse laced with request. I said nothing, letting her feel the silence. I didn't realize how much I depended on you, she continued. On the house, on everything you gave me. Vivian's gone. Amen too. I guess I need a little help to start again. I set my cup down. Help. Celeste. Earn money. Her mouth tightened. Shame flickering across her face. Just something to get by. I'll pay you back. I reached into my purse and took out a small card. There's a counselor in town who works with families rebuilding after financial loss. You should call her. She blinked at the card as though it was written in another language. That's it. You are really not going to help me. I'm helping you, I said softly. Just not the way you expect. Tears welled in her eyes. You really sold the house for good. I leaned back, meeting her gaze. No, dear. I sold the illusion that it was ever yours. Her lower lip trembled, and for a moment, I saw the child she once was, the one who used to braid daisies into my hair, who used to fall asleep on my lap. But the years had built walls no apology could climb. When she left, her coffee untouched, I stayed behind a while, watching the sunlight drift across the table. It wasn't anger that fueled me now, no sorrow, just a quiet certainty that love without respect was never home at all. Spring returned to the marsh with soft wind and white herons gliding low over the water. I spent the morning hanging a set of wind chimes I'd made from 12 old keys, some rusted, some still shining, each one hung from a thin ribbon, labeled in my neat handwriting: patience, trust, boundaries, grief, courage, forgiveness, and progress. When the breeze stirred them, the gentle sound carried across the yard, a music that belonged only to peace. Inside, my small desk faced the window. I opened my journal, the leather one smoothed by habit. The pen hovered a moment before the words found me. Love built me. Boundaries saved me. I underlined the last three words and let them sit there, solid and steady. A knock at the door startled me, a postal carrier with a thick envelope stamped from Savannah. Inside was a letter from the director of Safe Haven Shelter. Dear Mrs. Vale, it began. We wanted you to know that your gift helped rebuild a woman's dormitory. The new wing bears your family name, Vale House. It stands for safety, not shame. Thank you for believing in second chances. I set the letter down and pressed a hand over my heart. For the first time in years, my name didn't feel like a relic of pain. It felt like something that had grown roots somewhere good. As the sun dipped lower, I stepped out to the porch. Popcorn, the stray dog who had decided long ago to adopt me, called at my feet. The wind picked up again, the chimes ringing softly in 12 uneven notes, never in rhythm, but always in harmony. Freedom, I realized, wasn't loud or ground. It was the quiet kind, the kind that lets you sit still in your own company and feel safe there. I closed my eyes, breathing in salt and jasmine, and let the wind carry the sound of the keys further than memory could reach.